With Team of the Season just around the corner, if you guys need FIFA 23 coins, make sure you check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use my code Rema, you can get yourself a nice 5% discount. So what's up guys, my name's Ash and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, I've got some custom tactics and player instructions for one of the most balanced formations in FIFA 23, this being the 4-2-3-1 narrow variation. Now some people get confused and think I mean this wide one that you see in my team screen here. I just obviously switch formations in game, like this is just how I get chemistry on my players, but the formation we'll be using for the custom tactics is this one here. So I just wanted to clear that up guys, but yeah, let's get right into today's video. Okay guys, so starting off with the custom tactics, for the defensive style I like to have this on balanced. This is because it gives you the greatest control over your defense, where you're able to press when you need to press, but you're also able to drop off and be a little bit more passive and conservative when you need to be. So balance just gives you a greater control over your defense, which is super important, especially against those higher end opponents. That being said, if you feel more comfortable with pressure tactics, that's also fine as well. Now moving on to the defensive width, I like to have this on 35. This is so we can primarily cover the central areas and block the attacks through the middle. This is super important because if we have like a really high width, it's very easy for our opponents to just like pass and run right through us. So it's important to be compact and block off the center of the pitch. We don't want to make this width too narrow though, otherwise we've got no width to cover the wider areas. When we have it on 35, we're at least able to have a little bit of natural width so we can still cover the wide areas when we need to. Now moving on to the depth, I like to have this on 60. This is because I find it to be quite balanced. So we don't have it like super high to the point where we're always getting through balled, and we don't have it super low to the point where we're always getting pinned back. So having it on something like 60, it doesn't have to be this specifically, but it kind of just gives us a balanced defensive line where sometimes we can sit a little bit deeper and other times we can push higher up the pitch. Now moving on to build up play guys, I suggest having this on balance. This is because it's the most consistent to use. Sometimes you can play quickly, other times you can play slowly. It just gives you a lot more control when you are building up the play. Now moving on to chance creation guys, I suggest using direct passing. This is because it's the most meta option you can use. Basically what it does is it makes your attacking players bunch up against the defenders, so you can do the really overpowered 1v1 isolation plays. Players also make the extra movements in the box so you can get off that extra pass and really guarantee those goals, so it minimizes some of the RNG in this game. Now moving on to the attacking width, I like to have this on 40. This is so it's not too wide, because if we have this too wide, we're basically playing a 4-2-3-1 wide, which if we wanted to do that, we'd use the wider formation, you know what I mean? So we don't want to have that too wide, and we also don't want to have it too narrow, because our players will be like so close together that they're sat on top of each other, and it's not very good overall. So we kind of want to go for a little bit of a balance where it's neither too narrow or too wide. So something like 40 goes quite well with this formation. Now moving on to players in box, I like to have this on 5. This is bang in the middle. This is so we can commit some players into the box to create chances, but at the same time we don't overcommit the entire team to the point where we get counter-attacked. As for corners and free kicks, we have these both on 1 because there is a corner kick routine that I use which requires both of these to be on 1. Link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen. Now moving on to the plays you want to use guys, in the striker position, because it is a one striker formation, I suggest going for a nice well-rounded striker. This is because you have to compensate for the fact that there's one striker instead of 2 in this formation. So where you could get the balance between 2 strikers in a 2-striker formation, you have to get that all in one player in this formation. So I just suggest going for a nice well-rounded striker, somebody that can do a bit of everything. Now moving on to the central cam, I suggest using a nice technical player. This is somebody with really good agility and decent dribbling stats, and obviously, you know, good passing and shooting as well. You need somebody that is really good at creating in this game, in this position, because otherwise you're going to struggle to create anything. If you use a clunky player that is not able to turn and has no creative ability, you're going to struggle a lot with this formation. So just make sure your cam is as good as you can get them, and yeah. Moving on to the right cam and the left cam, we like to use good winger style players. These are players with good pace, good dribbling, good skill moves, good shooting, crossing, basically good all-round attacking play. You just need them to be those good winger style players because these are your main outlets in the team. You're not going to want to use like slow and clunky players here. Now moving on to the left CDM, we have a more defensive minded player. This is somebody that is going to stay back and defend for us and, you know, really add a lot of security to the defense. So if you can get it, a medium high work rate is super beneficial as you get the maximum contributions in defense and they're not too bothered about going forward. But, you know, work rates aren't a necessity, they're just something you can aim for. Now moving on to the right CDM, we use a more box to box style player. This is somebody that's going to attack and defend. So you're going to want somebody with a high work rate if you can get it, as you get the maximum contribution in attack and defense. But you also want this player to be nice and well rounded. You want them to have really good all round stats so they can do a bit of everything. Now moving on to the fullbacks, I like to go for a balance between the two. So my left back is more attacking and will actually commit going forward, so I like to use a more attacking minded fullback. And then in the right back position, I use somebody that maybe isn't as good on the ball but is a lot more defensively solid. That's just the balance I like to go for. As for the centre backs and the keeper, these just need to be as good as you can get them. There's not too much to say about them. Now moving on to the player instructions, guys. On the striker, I just have him on stay central. The reason we have him on stay central is because we don't want him drifting off into the wider areas, especially since he's our only striker. It's important he's always in the correct positions because otherwise we just have nobody in the striker position. So we want them to stay central so they're always in the correct areas, and we also have them on mixed attack so they get more involved in the build-up. If you put them on getting behind, they always make the same runs. They're very one-dimensional and it just forces you to constantly play through balls. If you put them on mixed attack, you just get a lot more out of your striker. Now moving on to the central cam, we just completely leave him alone because we don't really want to restrict this player all that much, so we just leave him on the default settings so he can do a bit of what he wants. As for the right cam and the left cam, we have them on get into the box for cross. We have them on get into the box for cross because if you have them on balanced crossing runs, sometimes they can be very static and they won't really get involved when you're near the penalty area. They'll kind of just watch. So if you put them on get into the box for cross, it means they will make the transitional runs to get more involved, which is super beneficial. Now moving on to the left CDM, the more defensive minded one, we have him on cut passing lane, stay back while attacking and cover center. We have him on stay back while attacking because he is a more defensive minded player, so we don't really want him going forward, so we just have him stay back. We have him on cut passing lane, so he's always looking to break up the play and intercept the passes, which is super useful. And then we also have him on cover center, so he focuses on defending the central areas, which is super important, otherwise your opponent can basically just pass right through the middle, which is not what you want. Now moving on to the right CDM, the more box to box style player, we have him on default settings and cover center. We have him on the default settings because he is a more box to box style player. He has a bit of a free roll, so we don't want to restrict him all that much. We kind of just let him do what he wants to do. We also have him on cover center though, because like the left CDM, we do want him to block off the attacks through the middle. Now moving on to the fullbacks, on my more attacking minded one, the left back, I have him on balanced attack and overlap. The reason we do this is so we can commit him forward, and we like to do this because the 4-2-3-1, obviously it's still like a wider formation than some narrow ones, but it's still a narrow formation, so sometimes we want to add extra width and get a proper wide option going forward. So we put this player on balanced attack and overlap, so he's always making the overlapping runs to add a wide option to our attack, and it just gives us a bit more variety when going forward. It's super useful to have, guys. On the right back, my more defensive minded fullback, I have him on stay back while attacking and overlap. We have him on stay back while attacking, so we always at least have 3 defenders back at a time, and then we have him on overlap because in case I press L1 to send him on a run forward, he'll make the overlapping runs to add extra width as opposed to making the inverted ones and running narrow. As for the centre backs and the keeper, these are on default settings and I do not touch them. But yeah guys, they're my custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-2-3-1. If you have enjoyed or found it useful, please be sure to drop this a thumbs up as it does really help me out. Sub to the channel if you are new, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you are notified when a video is posted. And with all that aside guys, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.